Yeah, so, well, thank you, everybody. Welcome, GM for those who are still waking up. So yes, thanks for joining this workshop and this session on native account abstraction, and with a particular focus on zkSync, Era, and Starknet. So a very short intro and presentation on my side. My name is Antoine. I am ecosystem lead at Argent, which basically means that I am the go-to guy for everything related to Argent and Argent products. I'm always very happy to discuss account abstraction. As Steve said in the intro, that's a topic that we've been exploring for a long time at Argent. I mean, actually, since the onset of the company. Yes, I'm always also very happy to discuss anything related to zkSync Era or zkSync, let's say, and Starknet, which are the two blockchains upon which Argent is building at the moment. Now, regarding the agenda, I will take the bold assumption today that everybody already knows what is account abstraction, that you know what is the difference between an EOA and a contract account, that you have some kind of global idea of the use cases of account abstraction, why it's very important, and why we really need it to improve UX in Web3. That assumption might be wrong. If it's the case, please don't hesitate, ask your questions in the chat, and I'll be very happy to spend some time on these concepts if necessary. But so today, really, the focus I want to have in this session is really on account abstraction on Ethereum, and why there is a very big case for native account abstraction. And at the end of the session, we will also see how we are currently already unlocking AA with zkSync Era and Starknet. Now, when it comes to account abstraction, the main question now is how come there is still not a wide adoption of account abstraction on Ethereum, right? And the answer to that question basically boils down to three elements. The first one is that Ethereum is expensive. So it's expensive to send a transaction from an EOA, an externally owned account, but it's even more expensive to send a transaction from a smart account, right? Because smart accounts are smart contracts. So they have this layer of intelligence that is built in and which consumes even more gas. So that's a first problem. A second problem is that at the onset of Ethereum, it was deemed that externally owned accounts would belong to actors and players outside of the blockchain, so basically users, and they would need to have the capability to initiate transactions, while smart contracts would belong to projects, would belong to dApps and to protocols, and so would not need to initiate transactions. And hence, smart accounts cannot initiate transactions on Ethereum, only EOAs can do so. So that's a problem. And then the third problem we have is that smart accounts are second-class citizens on Ethereum. You might have heard of that concept of second-class citizens already quite a bit. What it really means, and it's a bit related to that previous point, of course, if smart accounts cannot initiate transactions, they are second-class citizens, but it's also a problem with adoption, actually. Adoption from the ecosystem and adoption from the dApps building in the ecosystem. So many dApps on Ethereum today are still not compatible with account abstraction. That's mainly a matter of EIP 1271 and signature validation. But also many dApps don't build with account abstraction in mind. They don't try to to leverage the use cases of account abstraction simply because Ethereum is still very, very well, I would say, oriented towards EOAs rather than smart accounts. So if we come back to that first issue here, Ethereum is expensive. There is a very easy way to solve that, and it's called layer 2s, right? So we have now layer 2s, all kinds of them, many of which are actually EVM compatible chains. And so that's a good way to solve that issue. Even if smart accounts are still a bit more expensive than EOAs, on a layer 2s, it really doesn't matter anymore, doesn't make any difference. But then some smart people also decided that they would try to find a way to solve that second issue, right? And to kind of emulate smart accounts initiating transactions. And so if we come back to how an EOA transaction works on Ethereum, that's very basic, right? But so the user will sign a transaction using a private key. The signature scheme on Ethereum, which is a standard one, is ECDSA. that transaction will be sent to the mempool, and then a validator will pick up the transaction and will add it to a block and execute it. So that's how EOA transaction works. But then we have decided we wanted to somehow have smart accounts initiating transactions as well, right? So before ERC-4337, this is how it worked. The user would use a private key to sign a message, not a transaction, remember, because EOAs cannot initiate transactions. So it would sign a message using an arbitrary signature. That's one of the powers of account abstraction. You don't need to have an ECDSA signature per se as a user. And then that transaction is sent to a relayer, which will actually, well, sorry, I said that transaction, but it's actually that message is sent to a relayer, which will include it in a transaction. What is a relayer? A relayer is basically an externally owned account that is managed and that is run by some kind of centralized entity. So if I take the example of Argent, we have a product on Ethereum L1, which is called Argent Vault. And so we use to run our own relayer to initiate transactions with that smart account, right? And so that relayer, which is centralized, will use a private key to sign the transaction, very much like any kind of EOA. And then we have the classic flow going to the mempool. The validator will pick up the transaction. And then at the end of the flow, simply the signed message will be sent to the user's smart contract wallet for execution. That used to work pretty well, but the issue is that we have this single point of failure here, of course, which is a centralized entity in the middle of the flow, which, of course, from a censorship resistance point of view is not good, right? Because the relayer could decide to prioritize some transactions and some messages, or simply to block other ones. And so we came up with ERC-4337, which actually introduces this concept of bundler, which will replace in a decentralized way the relayer. And so since ERC-4337, the way we send transactions using smart accounts is simply that the user will use a private key to sign what is called a user operation. And that signed user operation is sent to an alternative mempool where you only have user operations. And the bundler will come and pick up those user operations, will bundle them, will package them together into what is called a bundle transaction, right? And so that bundle transaction will then follow the traditional flow, going to the mempool, to the validator. But then there is a last step, which is called the entry point smart contract. And that entry point smart contract will unbundle the transaction. It will unpackage it, select the user operations, and send them to the related user smart contract wallets for execution. So, I mean, it's very obvious that this solution is much better. So ERC-4337 is very good. We get rid of a centralized solution, and we introduce this concept of bundler. The only issue is that it's suboptimal because it's not implemented at protocol level, simply because that was too difficult to do, and also from a security point of view, that would have could have had some consequences. So if we take a step back, this is the transaction flow on Ethereum before ERC-4337, right? So whether your transaction would come from an EOA or from a smart account, it would follow I would say, a flow that is quite similar. It would just end up in the general mempool and then be picked up by a validator, right? The only difference between smart accounts and EOAs is that smart accounts transactions would first go through a relayer, which, as we saw, is a centralized point of failure. So that was not the best option. And so ERC-4337 effectively decentralizes that relayer. But at the same time, in order to do that, it kind of introduces a second transaction flow, right? So transactions coming from EOAs, they will follow this, traditional flow, and transactions coming from smart accounts, they go to the user ops mempool first, then the bundler, then the mempool, then the node validator, and then finally the entry point contract. So we kind of have two different flows, right? And there is a small issue with that. It's the fact that if you take the example of Paymaster, so you might know what a Paymaster is, and so it's this system that enables users to have gasless transactions or to pay for transactions with tokens that are not native tokens. So you could use any kind of token to pay for your gas. Paymasters, they will actually interact with the entry point contracts, and it's very clear on the drawing here that transactions coming from EOAs that don't go through that entry point contract, right? That's something they skip, meaning that with ERC-4337 on Ethereum L1, actually EOAs have no account abstraction capabilities, right? You really need to have a smart account in order to benefit from these innovations. And so in terms of adoption, it's kind of a problem because dApps then have to build two different user experiences. They have to detect whether the user is using an EOA or a smart account. If it's an EOA, then the user experience should just, be the traditional one that we all know. But if the user is using a smart account, then the dApp should actually be able to offer the user some other kind of user experience and account abstraction. So paymasters, for instance, here in the example. And so dApps actually have to build for two different types of users, which is difficult, which is most of the time so far, and at least not done. And I don't think it's going to be done before a long time on Ethereum, simply because Ethereum is so centric around EOAs. So if we come back to our table, yes, layer 2s, they solve that issue that Ethereum is expensive. Thanks to ERC-4337 and bundlers, we can now initiate transactions with smart accounts. That is solved as well, but still, smart accounts are second-class citizens on Ethereum and on EVM compatible layer 2s. So what if we could actually take that ERC-4337, which is a very good innovation, and bring it one step further, right? And try to embed it directly in a chain. What if we could actually build it on a zk rollup for scalability? So there is no cost, it's not too expensive. What if we could actually integrate it at protocol level? So we don't have to compromise on anything. We don't have any centralized relayer. We don't have off-protocol bundlers. And what if we could actually have a single mempool with a single transaction flow to really make smart accounts first-class citizens? Well, that's exactly what zkSync did. So that is the zkSync Era transaction flow. As you can see, whether your transaction comes from an EOA or a smart account, it will go to that unified mempool, then be sent to a bundler, which is called an operator on Era. And then it will go to the entry point contract called the bootloader, which in turn interacts with the paymaster. So we only have one transaction flow, right? And what is very powerful here is that because we only have one transaction flow, EOAs actually are compatible with some of the account abstraction capabilities. So EOAs could actually benefit from paymasters on zkSync Era, which makes it, of course, very, or at least much more easy for dApps to build with paymasters in mind. For instance, if you take the example of paymaster, because they know that all their users, both coming from EOAs or smart accounts, will be able to use that capability. But we can even go one step further, and that's exactly what Starknet did. So this is the Starknet's transaction flow. Starknet just completely removed EOAs. So you don't have EOAs anymore, only smart accounts. And so, of course, smart accounts are now the only citizens that are still in town. So account abstraction is kind of a de facto reality on Starknet. As a user, you need to use account abstraction simply because you will have a smart account. So the smart accounts and the smart wallets can build account abstraction features, and then all the dApps can very easily integrate them as well. So that's the example of Starknet. And so if we come back to this table, and that's here really what I want to put the emphasis on, that's what is very important. So native account abstraction basically solves these three issues, right? zkSync, Era, and Starknet are layer 2, so they are cheap. EOAs and smart accounts can initiate transactions thanks to ERC-4337. So what they did basically is that they took ERC-4337 and simply implemented it at the level of the chain, at the level of the protocol. It's simply part of it. And then smart accounts are now first-class citizens because dApps can very easily build on these chains with smart accounts and account abstraction in mind, knowing that all their users will easily be able to use these features. Now, I just want to go now through a few examples of what we are doing, how we are working with zkSync Era and Starknet to implement account abstraction. So, of course, there is the example that is well known of social recovery. What you see here is what we have now on our Ethereum layer 1 product, but it's also coming in on Starknet and zkSync. So you don't need a seed phrase anymore if you need to recover your wallet. It is still completely self-custody, but you can do it using a phone or an email. You can use friends and family, or simply another hardware wallet that you have on the side. Let's say a ledger, and I mean, it's actually not a big deal if your ledger's seed phrase is discovered by someone else, because you don't need to keep anything, any token on your ledger. It's just used in case of social recovery. There is this product called Argent Shield that we are about to release on Starknet, which is effectively a 2FA backup. So that really brings users to a very, Web 2-like experience, where we are very used to 2FA in Web 2. It works very well. It's very good from a security perspective. And so if you use an untrusted device, or for some transactions that can be deemed a bit risky, we can request for second factor authentication. Then there is the paymaster. We have discussed it a bit already. This example is actually an example from a conference where Matter Labs basically enabled participants to download that wallet that you see here, and in the wallet people would get airdropped 10 BUIDL, and with this 10 BUIDL they could buy food from food trucks. But what is really awesome with this example is that as a user, all you do is send your BUIDL to the food truck and then enjoy your food, and you don't have to worry about gas fees, simply because gas was sponsorized by Matter Labs. And so thanks to paymasters, you don't even realize anymore you are using blockchain, right? You don't worry about having gas to pay. Then there is, of course, the multi-call. Multi-call is very, very often given as an example of account abstraction, and I think it's a very good use case. And the example often used is the one of swapping ERC20 tokens, where you first need to approve the token before swapping it. But here, what you guys are looking at is Aspect. It's a NFT marketplace on Starknet. And they actually brought to that marketplace an experience that is very, very much, that is very close to a Web 2 online shopping experience, basically. So users can simply select different NFTs from different collections. They would go into their carts, and then in one transaction, they can buy, because everything has been batched together and bundled together. And so from a user perspective, it's of course only one action to do. It's much better. And then there is the example of session keys that I like very much. This is Influence, which is a totally fully on-chain game on Starknet. They are still on testnet at the moment, but they will soon come to mainnet. And so, well, with session keys, so what you can do is at the beginning of the gaming session, you sign a key, you sign a key, which will give the authorization to your smart account to automatically approve all kinds of transactions that are part of a set of pre-approved transactions, right? So here you have a few examples of these transactions. That's not the full list, but you can scan an asteroid, you can give a name to that asteroid, or you can start and finish the construction of a building. That is all approved automatically by the smart account. And so the user doesn't need to physically go and approve transactions anymore. So that's almost the word for the end. I just want to spend some time here. Account abstraction combines Web3 magic and Web 2 UX. I think that sentence is very important, right? Because if we really want to bring that famous next billion users to blockchain, the next billion users everybody's talking about, we really need to acknowledge the fact that these users will come from Web 2, where UX has been polished for years, and they will expect the same kind of experience. And that happens thanks to account abstraction. No, just maybe a word on Argent. If you have questions, I will be very happy to answer them. But we have launched on zkSync Era. I think that was maybe a month ago now, almost together with the chain. We are still in a closed version of the app. So if you want to join and basically have access to the app, you can scan the QR code there and well, enter the wait list. But if you are building something and you are very interested in account abstraction and maybe you want to build on Era as well, please don't hesitate to simply send me a message and I will be very happy to help you skip the line. There is 300,000 people at the moment waiting to get onboarded to our product, so that might be helpful. And so yeah, that's it for today. Yeah, so I mean, I'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have. I see that the chat is still very empty, but don't hesitate if you want to come on stage. I guess it's possible as well.
Thank you so much, Antoine. Yeah, I think folks definitely don't be shy and just type in anything you want to ask. And before there's anything like spinning on, and I'll be like maybe asking some questions because I really enjoy the presentation. So I think the first thing probably more regards to the bundler on layer 2, because it's basically with a unified mempool. I'm not sure if that's actually a bundler or just like a regular sequencer. So I'm just saying that, yeah, I'm just saying that on Ethereum is like you have the sequencers for the regular EOA transaction, and then you have the bundler for the UO transaction. And if it's like for layer 2, it's like especially for Starknet, I think you have a slide displaying that everything goes to the same mempool. So is it still like a bundler with the same design as an ERC-4337, or is it more just like a regular sequencer? Yeah.
No, so it's still kind of a bundler indeed. It's very, very much inspired by ERC-4337 actually. The difference, it's really included in the protocol.
I see. So it's going to implement it, like all the interfaces will be the same for the like zkSync bundler as well as the ERC-4337?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. I cannot answer 100%.
I see. Yeah, and I was like researching about Argent maybe a couple of weeks ago, but probably some facts are not like super accurate. But I think you guys have like a vault product, which is more like for business, and then there's also like for the personal type of wallet. So I just wonder in terms of like the ERC-4337 compatibility or the usage of Relayer, etc. Is it like the same across different product lines, or is it like yeah? So that's basically a question.
Yeah, so I mean, so far we have two different products. Mainly, so we have a mobile product, a mobile app that you can use to actually go to the blockchains that you use with that mobile app are zkSync and Ethereum. And then we have an extension for Starknet. So Starknet is only on desktop so far, but the idea would actually be to bring all these products together. And the first step in the coming month will be to bring both Starknet and zkSync Era in our mobile app.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I'll be pausing maybe for 10 seconds to see if anything's coming up in the chat, or if not, I'll just keep going, making this one like a podcast style. Maybe less of a Q&A session, but more like an interview. Yeah.
Yeah, people don't hesitate. Please jump in.
Okay, I'll just keep going till there's something showing up. But I think I'm also very curious because you're the ecosystem lead, and I'm wondering maybe more on the business perspective when you're interacting with the different layer 2s. What's usually their approach for like helping wallets, smart contract wallets, more specifically in terms of like integrating with their protocols? So what's the type of help they provide?
Yeah, so actually the the job on zkSync and Starknet is very different, because these chains actually are very different. So zkSync is CVM compatible, meaning that any kind of DApp or protocol on another chain could very easily come to zkSync and be ported there. While on Starknet has its own language, so the community of devs is much smaller. But they help each other a lot. They work together very closely. So I would say it's a bit different. The challenge on Starknet is actually to go find devs and convince them to come to Starknet, where everything is so different. You have to learn a new language, which is called Cairo. What is interesting is that devs are always very curious and happy to try new stuff, right? But because it's a bit, different from what they might know on other EVM chains, that might require a bit of convincing. While on zkSync Era, we are working very closely with Mata Labs, I would say, to convince all the dApps that account abstraction is very important. That's actually one of the big the main selling points of zkSync Era is that you have a native account abstraction, right? And so all these layer 2s try to differentiate themselves from others, and that is a very good selling point. And so it's actually quite easy to make dApps understand how important it is to be compatible with account abstraction, and then to build with account abstraction in mind, because you might be compatible, but you also need to build, with multi-code, with session keys, and bringing this better and this very much improved experience to your chain.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like most of the BD kind of or ecosystem efforts are on the dApp side and the dApp side, but maybe less on the actual user side, because is it because the transaction type is still like not that popular, or what's the reason behind it?
Yeah, exactly. So the strategy here is mainly to convince dApps and to help them with implementing account abstraction and supporting account abstraction, supporting smart wallets. And we are convinced that by doing that, they will provide a better experience to their users, and so users will naturally come to the chain, and they will start using Argent and the different products we can offer them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And just also according to our interview with like Biconomy, I think that's also like their approach, like integrating with the dApps as the most important thing for their ecosystem development. And I also noticed like there are actually lots of smart contract wallets. Probably not as big as Argent, but I think the features they provide are quite similar. So as a follow-up question, I wonder, in terms of like winning over the dApps, what do you think is the most important thing, or maybe differentiation point for like Argent as opposed to other wallets? Because I do also see like session keys or like social recovery, all of these are like with all of the wallets basically.
I mean, my personal view is that the user experience will prevail. So the best wallets will simply win. And I think we have an awesome team at Argent, people working very hard to provide an awesome user experience. But then the other answer to that also is that for now, we don't really see or consider other smart account wallets to be competitors, because we are all together pushing the same narrative, right? Which is a narrative towards smart accounts and stopping with EOAs and MetaMask and all these old generation wallets that give you a terrible experience, that are completely problematic in terms of security as well. I mean, if you send tokens to a wrong address or to a wrong blockchain, how come your wallet won't tell you, hey man, what are you doing? This is not a blockchain where you're supposed to send your tokens, or this is not a wallet, this is not an address that you've been interacted with before. Please do a 2FA to make sure that's something you want to do. So yeah, for now we are all pushing towards the same direction.
Yeah, thank you. And I see Gigi's like handing up, putting her hands up. So do you have a question? Feel free just to open your mic and just ask right now.
Yeah, so I'm totally on agree with the user experience part, which to be honest, here in Montenegro, we're also in discussion with SAFE, where they've seen so many product coming up, but really it's user experience that we're lacking. Something else I've noticed throughout this AA series that we had, a lot of the projects very emphasize on the vulnerable paymaster side of the technology. I'm wondering, like, what about social recovery? Because that's also a big part of account abstraction. Like, how's the user experience on that end been? And if you have more to share about that, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Indeed, I mean, social recovery, to me, it's the first step, basically, because we are all here discussing, I mean, it's the middle of 2023, we are in a bear market, so everybody here in the call is a power user of blockchain. And we don't realize anymore how bad the UX is. But if you are a new user and you hear about that crypto and blockchain stuff, it's all decentralized, it's all self-custody, you want to try by yourself, people will tell you to download a wallet. And before even you can use that wallet, the wallet will tell you, okay, now you have a 12 words or 24 words seed phrase that you need absolutely to keep somewhere. It has to be private. So, I mean, you cannot lose it, but also you cannot share it with anyone, right? So it's the first interaction that people and mainstream people will have with blockchain. To me, it's not possible, right? It doesn't work like that. People will just give up at that stage. And so we need to find ways for, to get rid of all these barriers to entry. And so social recovery is a perfect way to do that. You don't have seed phrases anymore. And actually, when you start using your wallet, you don't need to be confronted from the start with this kind of issues. Basically, you could just start using your wallet, and then at some point you will start having some funds on your wallet, maybe $10, maybe $100, and your wallet will tell you, okay, now you have some funds in your wallet. Maybe it's time to think about backup, because you never know what could happen. The kind of backup we have is, okay, phone and email, friends and family, and hardware wallet, as you can see here. If you start having really a lot of money, you could prefer to use a hardware wallet. Again, as I said, the idea of the hardware wallet is only that you will need it to sign a transaction to recover your account, but so your funds won't be kept on that wallet. And so it all makes it much easier for onboarding. It's also much closer to what people already know from Web 2, where, I don't know, you forgot your password. Well, you have that forget password button, and then the company will send you a new password. And that's, to me, that's exactly the kind of experience we need to bring to Web 3.
I would say, like, social recovery, that the name of it was kind of directing people towards one end, but actually, if we think about it, it's, so I'm not sure if you have any friends like that, but if you want to give some Bitcoin or some coins to your relatives, you would give them a wallet, but then not actually giving them the seed phrase, and you'll keep it for them. And then one day when they realize they really know what Bitcoin is, and then you'll pass over the seed word. This is actually, like, very similar to a social recovery, but in a very naive way that people does it previously. Now this social recovery actually enables this kind of things to be done online, which would be fun to explore further. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good example.
I actually also have a follow-up question just on the social recovery part. So previously you were talking to Soul Wallet, and I think the person was like an engineer person. Not sure if it's the best question to ask you, but one of their major technical difficulty is implementing the wallet on multiple chains. And in terms of social recovery, when people change their password or any type of metadata for the wallet, they need to synchronize that for all of the different chains. And that can really be a headache. So I just wonder what's the approach for Arjun on that part. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, of course, that's one of the difficulties we have with smart account wallets. So your account address will be different on every chain, right? It's not like with MetaMask, you can have the same address on all your Ethereum chains. It's not possible with smart accounts. So I think that's something we still need to work on. I mean, at Argent, we are only building on Starknet and zkSync because these are the only chains that have native account abstraction. But indeed, we also want to be able to, it's not the case today, but that's something we're working towards. We want to have the ability to bring those two chains in the same wallet, right? So in the same mobile wallet, it will be at the beginning. And so, yeah, we need to think of solutions to do that. Some say you should, I mean, ideally you should have an ENS, and then each of your different addresses on layer 2s would actually be linked to that ENS. What we will do here at Argent is that we will use email addresses. So when you make an Argent account, you can provide your email address, and using that email address, we can actually know that you have an account on Starknet and that you have an account on zkSync, and then bring them together in the same device. But indeed, in terms of social recovery, there is some technical difficulties. We are working on this and we are finding solutions. And I can't go too much into details into the tech stuff, but that's one of the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Also on the email part, I think there's also just the sheer difficulty of like changing an email on like one of the chains and then like having to do the same for like all of the other, and definitely not having the user to do that because that'll be a headache. And another follow up more like regarding the other layer 2s is that we noticed that some like major ones like Optimism, they are like not really having as much support on account abstraction as opposed to like the 2 layer 2s we like introduced earlier. So what do you think will be like their type of action? Do you think it's gonna be like no support, or does like Argent also consider maybe building on like Optimism, for example, for AA as well? And yeah.
Yeah, no, so probably there won't be any support for chains that are not natively integrated with account abstraction, because we really think that is gonna make the difference, right? So users are gonna come to these chains where everything is so much easier because it looks like you were just using Web 2. There might come new chains which will have native account abstraction as well, and then we might consider integrating them as well. But for the moment, it's not on the roadmap.
Got it. And just received another question from Gigi asking, can we use like some modular solution for like integrated the app like safe module and maybe use that and build on top of Argent?
These are difficult questions, Gigi. No, to be frank, I don't really know what safe module is, but the idea with smart accounts is that it can actually be modular as well. So you could come, and that's actually what happens. So what we do here, let me come back to the slide. Here with Influence, you have your Argent account on Starknet, and then if you want, you can add a module which is session keys module, and so you add that to your account, and you will be able to enable session keys with Influence. So wallets will become modular. Everybody will be, maybe not everybody, but people will be able to come up with different blocks, and we might, build the wallets or build these blocks on top of the wallets because it's a smart contract, and so you could theoretically do anything you want with your wallet.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think safe module probably refers to like the Gnosis saves like modular solution, and definitely the same goes for like Argent as well. Okay, gonna pause for another 10 seconds to see if any other question popping up, or else I think we're kind of close to the time for 45 minutes. Oh, another one, nice. So Pete is asking in the chat, what is the progress of fraud monitoring functionality of Argent? Yeah,
that is a very good question. I'm not sure that was on my slides, but yeah, this is a bit related to it as well. So there are two things. Something we are doing on Starknet. Starknet is still a small ecosystem, so we basically know everybody and all the dApps building on Starknet. We have a list of whitelisted dApps. So dApps can come to Argent and ask to be whitelisted on that list. They have, to provide all kinds. Some documents they have to provide their access to the GitHub, this kind of stuff. And so we can make sure that when the user will interact with that dApp, it's going to be the right dApp, right? That you're not interacting with some kind of fake dApp. So that's something we use. Also, we kind of run some, I would say, basic tests on the smart contract, that the user is interacting with. So just, making sure it doesn't look suspicious. If it does, we let the user know. But it's only, the beginning of account abstraction, and something that might be possible. That's not something we are doing internally at Argent, but we believe it will happen, is that a third party might actually be part of your 2FA. And we might have specialized companies in monitoring frauds that will give you a green light when you try to interact with the app. And so basically, for, I don't know, if you want to spend more than, let's say, $500 on a transaction, and you interact with a given app, that company, it might be a centralized or decentralized company, might be requested one of the 2FA signatures to give you a green light to use it. You can also override it if you think it's not working properly. But that way we can have specialized companies, doing some fraud monitoring and helping users with the way they navigate Web3.
Nice. Not sure if that answers Pete's question, but I think thank you so much, Antoine, for that. And do we have any additional question for Antoine before we are done for the session? Okay, gonna give 5 seconds for any last questions. Actually, I have one last question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, so you mentioned there's a relayer like solution that Argent's been using before ERC 4367. So I just wonder, it's like fully ported over to protocol compatible after 4367, or is it also like still a part of the infrastructure? Because I see, like, for example, Biconomy is like still using a layered network. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be frank, I did not join Argent late enough to be able to really know, but I think we don't use it anymore.
Got it. Well, that's my question. Oh, final one from Pete.
Pete. Yeah, Pete. So so the question is, any plan to implement Argent in Ethereum mainnet? So actually, we have a product which is called Argent Vault on Ethereum mainnet, and that was the initial product that was launched by the founders back, a few years back. But they're at the beginning they were actually paying for transaction fees and deployment fees of the contract for the users. So it was completely painless for users to have a smart account on Ethereum. But then, activity took up on Ethereum, and the bull market came, and basically doing transactions on Ethereum started to cost $200. But when you have a smart account wallet, it costs even more because of that, programmability that you have in your smart account, right? So we still have the product. That's not. And we still maintain it, and we have users who have kind of, I would say, big amounts on Argent Vault. It's called Vault. We believe it's a very good solution if you have more than $50,000 and you want to keep them in a safe place. There is the social recovery that is active there as well, so you can sleep at night because you don't have your seed phrase to keep somewhere. But that is not what we are working the most on at the moment. We really believe that layer 2s and zk rollups are the future.
Yeah, it can very relatable on the very high gas fee and like additional costs for the smart contract wallet part. But it's definitely like worth it given the additional features. So okay, so another 5 seconds before we close it for tonight or today. Cool. I guess that's it. So thank you so much, Antoine, for being here again. And for folks, one last advertisement is like definitely come to see us at Montenegro, which we're gonna have a hacker house starting in May 18th. I'll also be personally there. But that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, Arjun, and hope to see you at Montenegro or wherever.
Yeah, I won't be there, but I think people from Argent will be, yes.
Cool. Okay, have a nice rest of your day or night or.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Antoine.